Hello Campbelltown. I'm here today with Stephen Smith, who is the chair of the Council Assessment Panel and has been so for about the last 7 years. He's a qualified planner and knows planning back to front. And what we are talking about today is the new system that the state government is bringing into effect on the 19th of March. The development rules are about to change, and we want to know what those changes are. So hello Stephen.
Hello Jill, how are you?
I'm very well. Look Stephen, can you just take us through why the state government has changed the system?
Yeah, sure. Look, I think it's important to know that this review or the change of the system started back around 2014. It started with the previous state government where they engaged an expert panel to provide advice to them on the planning system. And this expert panel, which was chaired by QC, Mr Brian Hayes, basically reported back to the government that the current system was quite cumbersome, it was slow, it was difficult to understand, and it was inconsistent across parts of the state. So, based on the recommendations of the expert panel, the government decided to introduce new legislation, which is called the Planning, Development and Infrastructure Act, replace all of the council's development plans with a single planning design code, and also to establish an online lodgement and assessment system. So a really quite radical change to what we see at the moment.
So we're aiming for consistency across the state.
What we are going to see is a lot of the existing zones which each council has developed over a number of years and with a lot of consultation with their communities will disappear, and we will see a lot more consistency of zones and policies across, particularly metropolitan Adelaide. Will be a bit different in some of the regional areas, but we will see that consistency in Metro Adelaide and some of the regional centres.
So what role will councils have in this planning system?
So councils will have a role. One of their roles will be that they still have a responsibility around development assessment. They are still known as what is called a designated authority. So council will have to appoint an assessment manager who will make certain decisions around planning applications, and also in terms of the assessment panel, which I chair, you will appoint that. So you will have that role of administrating the appointments of that system. You will still have a role in terms of with your council staff around building matters, and you will certainly still have a role around compliance of issues. So if there are concerns about people not meeting their requirements, their planning or building approval, then there will be a compliance role there. We believe that there will be still a role for councils in policy setting, while the State Planning Commission has the responsibility for the new planning and design code. If a council believes that parts of that code should change to fit more closely with its area, then councils can certainly still put proposals forward about what changes should occur. Though if you think about a zone, the idea of a spot zone, if you've got your individual property and you want that change from, say, a residential zone to a commercial, probably unlikely to happen because because it affects multiple council areas.
How will ratepayers and developers lodge an application for development on their land?
Okay. Well, I think this is probably one of the, I might say, the beauties of the new system. There is this online planning platform which the government has developed. So for the first time, probably across the state, anybody who wants to lodge an application will be able to lodge it through this online system. That can happen 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And they can even keep an eye on how their application is progressing through that system. Now, that's not to say that if somebody is struggling with technology, they can still come to the council and seek council's assistance to lodge that application on their behalf. But generally, it is very much an electronic-based system that's being established, and an individual can monitor, as indicated, the progress of their application, because the new Act has certain timeframes when the relevant authorities have to make those decisions, so they can keep an eye on what's going on.
Does every new home have to have a tree planted?
That's a really good question. Given that we haven't seen the final code, I can't say for certainty yes or no. What we have heard from the Minister and the State Planning Commission is that with certain types of applications, and there is one which is called a deemed to satisfy. Now that's a fairly sort of technical language, but basically what it means is if you within certain zones there will be certain dwellings that are in a sense allowed to happen. So there might be a single dwelling in a residential zone where if you meet certain criteria in terms of setbacks and that, your house can be built. One of the requirements will be in terms of this selection criteria is that depending on the size of the allotment, you will need to plant between 1 and 4 trees. Okay. Now, the government has recognised in some areas where there's some issues like reactive soils, which do occur in Campbelltown, you may not be able to plant a tree because it may have an impact on your foundations. If you can't plant a tree and the council or the planning authority will make that decision, what you will need to do is you'll have to put payment into a tree offset fund, which will be administered by the state government, and then those funds will be basically used to plant trees in areas where the trees can go.
So the money for the trees won't come back directly to the council?
No, it will be paid into a fund, and again we haven't seen the actual workings of this fund. The state government haven't released it, but the understanding is at the moment is certainly those areas where the council areas where the fund have been paid into, they will get that money back. It may be that the councils have to apply for those funds. Maybe, for an example, if you're doing some work along the River Torrens or one of your reserves and you want to plant some additional trees, you can access that fund to do that.
We'll look forward to finding out the details on that.
I think many councils will look forward to that.
What is the minimum block size?
Again, that's another good question that I can't answer with any certainty because, again, the code's hasn't been made available. What we do know is the minimum allotment size will depend on the type of dwelling to be built. So developments such as if it's called row dwellings or grope dwellings may have a smaller allotment size than those if it's a normal detached dwelling.
So we need to wait till the 19th of March to find
that's
that
right,
out.
and I'm sure there are those people who are lodging applications at the moment who may find that those allotment sizes may differ come the 19th. Probably one thing to add there, one of the things I think from a panel perspective is what we will see in the coming months is that applications, and we will be assessing applications which have been lodged under a number of different development plans that councils have had over the last couple of years, plus the code. So we'll be having to make decisions based on different plans and different policies. So that's something that we'll need to get our heads around and possibly has the potential to cause some confusion for the community because they will wonder why we're make a decision on one application based on one set of criteria and another application based on another set. But I imagine for maybe 6 or 12 months that could be the case. So
we'll be lacking consistency in the first instance.
Yeah, and I think that could be quite could be upsetting or concerning to some residents. But we have to make decisions based on the policy which was in force at the time that application was lodged.
Will there be changes to the consultation requirements for a development in an area?
Yes, there will be, and again, we will see that when the final code comes out. What we do know is, as I've indicated, applications like a deemed to satisfy, which are those which fit a zone, will not require public notification, so a neighbour doesn't need to be informed about those type of developments. There will be certain applications which are called performance assessed, which the assessment manager will deal with. Again, they don't need public notification. Those which will require public notification actually have to come to the panel. We'll have to be notified to adjoining property owners. There will also be a sign placed on the land. So this is something that's new. So anybody who's walking past or driving past can see that something is being proposed in the allotment, and they have a right to put in a representation. Probably the one.
So we've got representations from people who aren't necessarily neighbours.
That's correct. And the other probably important thing to know is with those type of representations, as a panel we can hear them, but those people who may lodge a representation to the panel don't have any further appeal rights to the Environment, Resources and Development Court. That will only now exist with what's known as restricted development applications, which are considered by the State Commission Assessment Panel.
So that includes neighbours don't have an appeal right?
That's right, but that is potentially with a large number of the applications that they will either not be aware that something's happening on a neighbour's property because there is no requirement to notify, or where there is a notification, they may be able to lodge a representation and identify their concerns. Once the panel has made its decision, there isn't any opportunity to take that further.
And will the new system mean changes in the Campbelltown area?
Look, I think we will see, there will be changes. I think because the zones could change quite significantly in some areas, and the policy will change, so we could see some things happening there. Hard to know at the moment whether they are positive changes or negative changes. And I think the other change we will see is around in terms of how applications are lodged, and as I've said, with this new online system, it could be easier for some people, and for others who don't understand technology, it might be a little bit harder. So I think our experience, I think, will be that this system could take 6 to 12 months to bed down. And all I would encourage is that as a community member, there is what's known as the ePlanning portal, and there's lots of information which we made available on that. So in first instance, have a look at that, or certainly I think talk to council staff if you've got questions on your application.
Are there any opportunities for people who are new to this ePlanning system to get training?
There is a lot of training being provided to what I say is professionals, so those who need to use the system, so whether it's council staff, builders and developers and the like. It's not clear to me that sort of training is available to a community member, and I think this might be a challenge because possibly many community members may only lodge one application in their lifetime. It isn't like they can now take a paper-based copy of something to their council. It all does have to be lodged online, and so that's going to be a big change for some people.
Well, Stephen, I want to thank you very much for helping explain the new planning system to the community. I hope that this information has been of use to you, and we'll aim to do this again if we find that there are significant changes that we think that the community needs to be aware of. Thank you very much for watching.
Thank you.